All righty, welcome back for another episode of Two Plane Sports. As promised, we've got a recruiting video for you this week or for this Wednesday leading up to this huge recruiting weekend this on the 3rd and 4th. It's going to be massive. I think there's going to be like 30 plus guys there already confirmed officially and unofficially. A lot of official visitors this weekend, which is huge and impressive for the very first summer event that OU is going to be putting on. So we're going to be talking about a few guys that could be committing here pretty soon, and OU got placed in some top 8s and some top 5s, and so we'll talk about a handful of guys just on this video. But before we get into it, we just want to say we appreciate it. We're planning to have a live stream on Monday, so this coming Monday, which will be June. I'm pulling up my calendar as I'm saying this, June 6th. At about 7:30 Central Time. It'll be between 30 minutes to an hour, give or take, just depending on how many of you guys show up. What you guys think, and we've never done something like this, so we don't know how long it'll be, but just enough for you guys to ask questions. You can, like Brandon said, it can be football, it can be basketball, it can be softball, baseball, or it can just be something random. I don't know, whatever you guys want to talk about with us, we'll be happy to answer it. So today we're going to be talking about Dylan Edwards and a few others, and just hit the subscribe button, like the video, comment on the video, let us know what you think about a live stream and also these players. So everything's linked below, and we'll get right into it. So the first guy is Dylan Edwards. This is someone we've talked about. Gosh, what did he get his offer in January? I believe right. That was like the first kind of big recruiting weekend that Brent Venables had. Edwards came and visited unofficially, got his offer, and a ton of crystal balls came in and flooded it. And, for OU as soon as he got offered. And then the commitment never came. He's, out of Derby, Kansas, so not too far away. Brent Venables is kind of a guy that, he's a Kansas legend. Edwards is a dynamic running back. He's like a Deuce Vaughn 2.0. I mean, 5'9", 165 pounds. We've talked about his stats, but I mean, they're ridiculous. Last year had 2,600 rushing yards, 38 touchdowns. That's insanity. I mean, he averaged over 10 yards a carry. He is planning to take an official visit this weekend, and there's a lot of momentum now that he could potentially commit after this weekend or while he's there and announce after. It sounds like OU is starting to lock this down, or maybe some other schools are just fading. I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of both. His top schools, I know he has connections to Kansas State, Nebraska, at Jackson State, and maybe a little bit of Washington. But it seems like it's an OU-Nebraska battle. Jose, what do you think about Edwards and the prospects of keeping him or getting him?
Yeah, the fact that he is taking this official visit, I think, has got to be good for the Sooners, because he did just come off his official Nebraska visit a couple weeks ago now. So, I mean, if he didn't want to commit before, that 2-week, I guess, break between the official visits, it's got to be good that he's wanting to go to Norman. And then he seems like he's been crystal balled to OU pretty much since he got the offer back in January. Like Wilt Fong crystal balled him right after his first visit to OU with Brent Venables as the head coach, and then like 3 or 4 others followed shortly after in February. I'm pretty sure that includes like Thune and Drum. So it really seems like the commitment is more so of like he wanted to do his due diligence, just like Venables wants all the recruits to do before making that announcement. And he's done it. He may not feel like there's a real connection anywhere else, because he has been pretty open on social media about how wherever he's committing, it's going to be where he feels like there's a connection with the staff. And development also is probably a priority, but he's been pretty open about he wants there to be a relationship with the staff is really important to him. So it seems like that's finally been, I guess, solidified in his head, or hopefully been more solidified. And by the end of this weekend, he just, hopefully Sunday or Monday, as we're doing this live stream, we see a commitment edit come out about how he's going to be a Sooner, and will hopefully enroll early, because I think at that position, it is beneficial if you come in as an early enrollee, just because there's not just a lot of competition and young competition with the running backs, but putting on some muscle, especially for a guy that's a little bit smaller stature, will be important so you can get more playing time early on.
Yeah, I think I'm glad Jose mentioned the fact that he's been crystal ball to OU. It feels like forever because we've talked about him. It's got to be the fifth or sixth time we've talked about him on this show. His recruitment process, I feel like, has been just a roller coaster. I think we talked about him way back ago, and you see all these crystal balls come flying in. We're talking about the possibility of him committing within a week. This is 3 or 4 months ago now, it feels like. And then he has that. There's one weekend later on down the year where he's supposed to be at Oklahoma for one weekend visit, and he like bails last second, goes to Arkansas, and then we feel not great about it anymore because why is he doing that? And now here we are again, feeling good. But again, I mean, it's been a wild recruiting process with him. It's hard to feel like, I guess he's doing due diligence, as Jose mentioned, but like, I mean, at this point, at least for OU stuff, he's got to have seen every single inch of the facility, talk to every single coach. Like I don't know what more stops we can pull out to get him. And it could just be him just taking his time, which is a good thing. But, hopefully, as Jose mentioned again, we do see that Monday while we're live that he commits. I think there's a good possibility of it. This guy has video game numbers, as you mentioned. Would be a huge piece to get. I think he could pair really well with Javante Barnes moving forward in the future. I think they bring a little bit of a different game. I think it'd be a really good 1-2 punch. I'm hopeful. But we've been hopeful before with this guy. So let's hope that he finally does, make that commitment.
Yeah, and there was also a moment there where it seemed like Oregon was gaining some momentum because they offered, I think it was April 18th-ish, and there was some serious momentum about him going to Oregon. And then Oregon picked up a commitment from Dante Dowdell. He's a guy out of Mississippi. He was a running back. So since that has happened, the momentum is kind of stalled. Dylan Edwards also, it seems like Nebraska's in this because NIL. It seems like Nebraska's starting to compete because they're, financially backed pretty strong. Not saying that's ultimately his decision, but I think this is weighing a factor in his decision. And just kind of overall the running back recruitment this weekend. So not only do you have Dylan Edwards, but you also have Richard Young. My opinion is I don't feel like OU is really truly in the running for Richard Young, but the fact that he's taken an official, that's good. My expectations of him being a Sooner are very minimal. And then someone I think we talked about, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, which was Daylan Smothers. He's a kid out of, I think it's South or North Carolina. I can't remember. But he's a recent offer and he's coming out for an official. Another kid that's extremely talented. So OU's going to have 3 kids that are extremely talented running backs, 3, 4, and 5-star. And I still think that Dylan Edwards probably should be a 4-star. But there's a lot of talent that's going to be on campus this weekend. And I just hope that they can pick up one commitment, 1 out of 3, within the next month or so. And if I were to pick 1 out of 3, I think it would be Dylan Edwards. I just think Richard Young's going to Alabama. And Daylan Smothers, I just don't think will be on campus enough because this is his first visit and it's an official to really put us over the edge. But I could be wrong. I mean, things have happened. That stuff has changed. Kids have committed off of one visit. I just feel like Dylan Edwards is the most likely candidate. So
with Richard Young, we have to at least be maybe not happy, but at least relieved that we weren't the school he decided to eliminate from his official visits because Ohio State did get the boot. I mean, he's saying they're so highly regarded on his list, but it can be a great sign when the guy at one point had you up there and then decided, never mind, I'm not going to take an official with you. And it's not the end of the world for him, but for us, it's definitely got to be beneficial because he's still considering Oklahoma as a potential landing spot. And like you said, I think he's been pretty open about how Alabama seems to be the school to beat. But I mean, DeMarco Murray, maybe he can beat them this time. They've gotten him on a couple of running backs in the past, and maybe it's his time to beat him out for one.
Yeah, and Ohio State got switched out for Notre Dame.
I for sure thought you were going to say something about Chop.
Oh God, yeah.
You love bringing up Chop when we talk about
I
Richard
forgot
Young.
about Chop. I'm glad you
How do you
remembered
forget
it.
about Chop? You love that guy.
And because I was thinking about the players specifically and how Ohio State, maybe they took your advice. Maybe they've been watching our podcast and they ran just the constant loop of Baker Mayfield planting the flag. And maybe that really imprinted on his mind and said, never mind, I can't go to Baker's home. I gotta, go to where he actually practiced, which is Norman, Oklahoma. So that's always a possibility. But
would that impact your decision if you were to see that as a recruit?
I mean, maybe when 17, 18 years old, I'd be like, all right, I mean, why not? Maybe I can plant the flag here someday or somewhere else. But I think that's a good sign. And then, hopefully Chop comes back because you can't not have that guy on campus,
Yeah. So just Richard Young, just his timeline, visiting OU this weekend, Alabama the following weekend, middle of the week on the 13th, visit to Notre Dame, then a visit to Georgia on the 17th, and Oregon on the 24th of June. So I'm imagining that his decision will be sometime this summer. All 5 officials will be taken. So someone to keep an eye on, but I'm feeling pretty good about Dylan Edwards. But as you said, Brandon, we've been excited about him before. So my hopes aren't too terribly high, but a lot of momentum there. So we'll move on to another kid that we have not talked about on this show. The reason being he just recently got offered earlier this month, or well, as you're watching this, it's last month, early May, is Jabron Harvey. He's 6'3", 215-pound edge player from Durham, North Carolina. He's a 2023 4-star, number 227 overall, and number 23 edge player in the class. He received his offer from Oklahoma on May 7th. And now is visiting. He came on campus today, Tuesday, the 31st, as we're recording this. I'm imagining it's a day or a couple day visit. I don't know how long exactly he's here, but OU offered him on May 7th. He's on campus on the 31st. So we're looking at, 3 to 4 weeks of a turnaround, which I feel like is pretty impressive. Last year, he just was a machine, 28 tackles or 28 sacks, 130 tackles. I mean, that's insane. I don't care at what level of high school football. I'm trying to think, someone else that comes to my mind that put up ridiculous stats was Ruben Bain Jr. He's on campus this weekend as well, but I think he put up like 28 and a half sacks in a single season last year. There's just not many kids that can put up nearly 30 sacks in high school, let alone 130 tackles as well. But he's on campus right now. Probably as you're watching this, he's probably still there. He's got his official this upcoming weekend to North Carolina. So I'd imagine he already had that one on the books. And that's why he came earlier this week and missing Champ U. June 10th, official visit to South Carolina. And then June 17th, officially visiting Louisville. Brandon, what do you think about Jabron and his overall play, since we haven't even talked about him before?
Yeah, he's an exciting prospect, as you mentioned. So, it seems to be like the video game numbers episode that we have today, because everybody we're talking about just put up ridiculous stats. With Jabron, he's got really good size, 6'3", 215, so he can play defensive end or outside linebacker, which is what he does for his high school. So that explains 130 tackles. It's hard to get 130 tackles if you line up as a defensive end every single time. But at the same time, to have 28 sacks in a single season when you don't even line up at defensive end every single snap, it makes you feel like every time he did line up at DN, he was probably getting a sack. Because if you're splitting your time between those two positions and you still end up with 28 sacks, there's a limited number of plays in which you lined up to rush in which you didn't hit home, which is absurd. In high school, where they play 9 or 10 games a season, maybe playoffs 12, and he's averaging over 2 sacks per game and over 10 tackles. I mean, yeah, it's freaky. A lot of fun there. I think Jose mentioned it before we started recording. I think what favors Oklahoma in this, what we talked about at first, Brum, is the fact that he was offered 3 weeks ago by OU, and he's here for his official. That shows some sort of excitement. But the teams that he's close with, and obviously we're biased on this show, but Oklahoma seems to be high on his list. And then you got North Carolina, South Carolina, and I forget the other one. But from a coaching staff perspective, and what your program has done recently in terms of success and putting guys in the league and stuff, I think Oklahoma has like a landslide advantage. I think Shane Beamer's doing really good things in South Carolina. I think Louisville was the other one, and they had a good day getting down to more today. But like, I mean, for real, like from a coaching staff perspective, and again, we're biased and all that stuff, but Oklahoma I think it's far and away the best position he could be in terms of development and stuff. We'll see how it plays out, but the guy that produces like that is a guy that we definitely want, and hopefully Bates and Chavez can get it done this weekend.
Yeah, so I was looking up a little bit more information on him because, like you guys said, it's the first time we've ever talked about him. He's kind of a new recruit to us just because he did just recently get his offer. But I think we're battling against North Carolina here. And again, like Brandon mentioned, we should have the coaching advantage, right? Just with the position coaches. If he gets coached by Bates or Chavis, it's more than likely going to be Miguel, but I'm sure Bates will help every once in a while. I feel like we have the advantage there. And again, like you guys mentioned, he came only 3 weeks after being offered. So there's got to be some real, at least the excitement for the player, because if it was just simply an offer, like these guys get offers all the time. Talented players get offers all the time. They don't always make a visit or make an effort to make a visit, even if it's official. So it's got to be good for Oklahoma. I think the school we're really going to have to battle here is going to be his hometown school in North Carolina. On3 I'm assuming it's a rough distance on how far these schools are. I don't know if it's from his home or from his high school, but apparently that his high school, I'm assuming, let's just say it's his high school, it's about 8 miles from the North Carolina campus. So, I mean, he'd be staying at home. So if he's a guy that really wants to stay close to home, maybe grew up a Tar Heel fan, it's going to be tough to get him away from that school. But if he's looking maybe at development, looking at coaches' resumes and what is being built at those universities at the position alone, let's not even take the entire program as a whole, just at his position. I feel like Oklahoma's just head and shoulders above everyone else, even Beamer. As much as we may like him, he still hasn't gotten to that point where I think even national media can say, yeah, this guy's putting together an SEC contender and even a national championship contender. Maybe he's on his way there because he has been able to get Rattler and Sogner move over there. But, I mean, if he's an offensive guy, I think offense is going to come a lot easier for him to recruit than defense. And then maybe some people could take Louisville as a serious contender just because it seems like they're building some excitement around this 23 class, but I really don't see them being a serious contender for Jay Braun. At least this late in the process, I think Oklahoma has somehow found a way to jump at least 2 of those schools and making it a North Carolina-Oklahoma battle down the stretch.
Yeah, and we can't also forget that, Mack Brown is quite the recruiter. He's pulled in some 5 stars. Also, as their defensive coordinator, they do have Gene Chizik. So that's just kind of something that could be selling him on the idea of staying at home. He's getting quality coaching from Mack Brown and Gene Chizik, but still, when you look at the program as a whole, as long as distance isn't a factor in his recruitment, because some guys it is a factor, some kids don't want to leave, which is fair. But I feel like him getting on the plane, coming out and visiting, it has to state that he's truly interested in coming out. So not that we'll see a commitment soon out of him, but I certainly hope that after all these visits, we don't see like a quick commitment other than OU, obviously. But if we don't see a lot of momentum as far as crystal balls to North Carolina or South Carolina or something, I'll feel pretty good. Hopefully we see a lot of out of OU, OU crystal balls, but probably won't end up happening right away.
If NIL is any sort of incentive to them, I mean, I'm not sure what programs or collectives these schools have for paying the players, but I would assume that Oklahoma is going to be nationally televised way more often than the 3 other schools, just because of the fact that it's Brent Venables' first year. Like, just being a player, like moving forward, you're more than likely going to be seen by more people being at Oklahoma than you are by being at any of the 3 schools.
Yeah, I think Louisville's starting to pay their players pretty penny as well, but I don't know. So um, we'll move on. Someone I think that's someone to keep an eye on. I'm hoping that OU can lock him up because 28 sacks, that's ridiculous. So we'll move on to the next kid. Someone in OU's backyard, and we haven't talked about him for a little while, is Bai Joby, and I hope I'm saying it right. And I might be totally wrong. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. He's an edge player from Norman, 2023 4-star, number 118 overall, number 10 edge player in the class. He is a great player. He had 16 and a half sacks, 56 tackles, his very first year of playing high school organized football. He's originally from, is it Senegal, I believe? So he's not originally from here, but he came to the U.S. I mean, he's a great prospect. He's got an official visit set up with Michigan State on the 17th, and then an official visit set up with Vanderbilt on the 24th. I know he's been at Alabama. I don't know if he's visiting this weekend. There hasn't been anything confirmed, at least from what I've seen. I would hope with him being in Norman, living in Norman, he could just drive right down the road and go visit and hang out for the day. But this recruitment's been kind of up and down. I mean, this is kind of one of the lasting effects from the Lincoln Riley coaching staff, that he felt really disrespected by them being in their, he's in their backyard. They don't offer him, really early. And, Venables and Chavis and Bates have been behind the 8 ball a little bit, because they've been trying to say, well, hey, it's not our fault that, you didn't get this offer. If we were here, you would have. But at the same time, the kid's like, well, I've got Alabama calling me. I've got Michigan State. I've got Vanderbilt. So OU's been a little bit behind the 8 ball, but I feel like they've made up a lot of ground. I'd love to see him come on campus. If he's not on campus this weekend, he's not visiting anywhere else, and he's at home, I feel like that would be a red flag. I think he's going to visit. I don't know. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, we'll just have to see when he visits. I'm assuming that, I mean, like you said, he's in Norman. If he lives there all year, then he's probably, he might just say, you know what, he changes his mind on Friday. You know what, I have nothing to do this weekend. Let's just pop over and see if Venables will let me join into the barbecue. But I mean, I think, and I mentioned this the first time we talked about him, the great thing about a player like Bai is that he is so young to the game of football. He only started playing it as a freshman in high school. So the fact that he's ranked this high is, one, either a product of just how raw and athletic he is, or two, but I mean, a combination of that and how quickly he can pick up on something, which is probably a coach's dream. When you can tell a player, hey, this is the mistake you're making and this is how you adjust, and he can pick it up like that. Like, what coach wouldn't love that? Like, there's not really, I mean, you got to coach him, but it's not like you're having to go give him like 1,000 reps before he finally gets it. You might give him like 10 and he's got it down and can probably apply it in a game situation. So, I mean, this dude's got so much room to grow. By the end of it, he could be maybe a 5-star, just because we still have his senior year to play. And I mean, again, being in Norman, if he's not someone that wants to move around a lot, like he's made the trek from Senegal, like who knows if he wants to go make another big move within the country and go to like a Vanderbilt. And I mean, he's going to Vanderbilt. He's taking an official visit later in the month. So not to say that they have an absolutely horrible football program, but they fucking do. And, maybe it's just a place where his family really wants him to focus on academics as well as, follow his dream of playing football. And Vanderbilt, whatever we want to say about their football program, they are a prestigious university with regards to academics. So maybe at that point, it's just what he wants to study. And if he wants to be an engineer or a meteorologist, then Oklahoma's got pretty good schools to help him out in that area. And he's going to have pretty good coaches to help him out and get to the NFL, but hopefully as he gets his degree.
Yeah. I think if he goes to Vanderbilt, it's definitely the academics. But at the same time, with his ability to pick up sports, it seems relatively quickly maybe he'll go to Vanderbilt and start playing baseball because they are pretty damn good at baseball. And he'll pursue a degree and play some baseball for Vanderbilt, pick it up in a day. But I think of all the kids we're going to talk about on this show, we've talked about Dylan Edwards, J. Brown Harvey, got another one coming up. Bai Jovi is the most important one, not only because he's in the backyard, but the fact that he's putting up these kind of numbers, really just picking up the game a year ago or 2 years ago. He had 17 sacks last year, just about 16 and a half. He's doing that just on just raw talent, physical ability. Just imagine just bullying kids and not really knowing every single in and out or, all the moves of the game yet. So as you mentioned, Jose, I think he's going to be a coach's dream to have a guy that can just pick the game up so quickly, kind of learn, probably soak stuff up like a sponge. I think he's the most important kid that we're going to talk about as far as who we want to lock up. I really hope we get this one done. You can't let a guy who literally is in your backyard in the same city as you go, especially when they're this good. I think he's going to have the best collegiate career of all the guys we're talking to. And again, it's just because of what he's done on the field in such a short amount of time actually playing the game. You don't really see that in high school football. He's got great size, fast. I think he's the most important kid to lock down. And hopefully he does make the 10-minute drive from wherever he lives to campus this weekend, hangs out with the guys, hangs out with Venables, hangs out with Chavez. He's an important one to lock up, and he's stamped.
Yeah. And I should have said this in the very beginning when we started talking about him, but part of the reason why we're talking about him is because he released his top 8, and I just left that out. He put OU, Georgia, Michigan State, Baylor, Vanderbilt, Miami, Alabama, and A&M in his top 8. So OU squarely in it. I think they're one of their. I think it's really going to come down to is OU, Georgia, Alabama, and maybe Vanderbilt.
Certainly A&M can't be in this, right? I mean, how many damn defensive linemen are going to go play there? Like, I know they're throwing you a lot of money, but boys, we can't have 15 5- and 4-star defensive linemen. You're going to waste your career there. As you mentioned on one of the shows, Brum. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. As a 16, 17, 18-year-old kid, it's going to be nice to have a shit ton of money thrown your way. No doubt about it. It's going to be fun, but you mentioned the longevity, long term, making that dollar count, making it last. If you are a guy who could be a first round pick, but you don't play because you're behind 3 other first round picks, you're going to screw yourself in the long run. At some point in time, these guys who are elite defensive linemen have got to stop going to Texas A&M because there's just so many damn mouths to feed at that Texas A&M defensive line now. And as Jose and Brum, we've all pretty much talked about on this show, we're going to see a sick amount of transfers coming out of that defensive line position in a year or so from Texas A&M.
Yeah, I think what's hurting A&M, or what may hurt A&M, because we don't know what the end of the result of this class is going to be, is with defensive linemen, they've stacked 2021 or 2022 so much that even if a lot of those guys stick around, because it's not like we haven't seen other teams just absolutely load up one room and guys end up staying around. With the transfer portal, it's a lot more rare now, but Alabama for a long time now has been able to stash big recruits in specific positions, and they'll just wait a couple years before they play. And that's fine. But the reason they do that is because it's Alabama. So if A&M underperforms, I think what Brandon said is 100% right. If A&M goes, I don't know, let's say 9-3, 8-4, and it misses it doesn't have any sort of hope in getting to a playoff berth, doesn't have a great bowl game, then we're more than likely going to see half of those defensive linemen recruits from this last class enter the transfer portal, because no matter how much money you're throwing at these kids, at the end of the day, their goal is to be NFL players. And if they can't do it there, they can sure as hell find another place that will take them, like Alabama, like Oklahoma. As much as we hate them, Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley was in competition for a few of those guys. SC could easily pay them and play under Grinch and underperform, but they'll play there. But other schools will play as long as or other schools can still get them, assuming A&M underperforms as they usually do.
Yeah, they're probably best case scenario this season's probably 10-2 for them. So we'll see. I don't know, but again, I agree. I don't think A&M is really a threat. I think it's going to really come down to OU and OU, Alabama, and Georgia. I really don't think Vanderbilt's legitimate.
And if Vanderbilt being on, I feel like Vanderbilt being on his top 8 kind of gives you an idea of kind of where he lies on, NIL playing a factor in his recruitment. I can't imagine NIL's throwing $500,000 his way to get him to commit, like an A&M might be doing. Like I don't, it just doesn't make sense for a school like Vanderbilt to do that.
Maybe he's a big country music fan too, and he's thinking about how fun that college experience would be living in the heart of Nashville. I mean, boys, Nashville's a fun city. That would be a great place to have your
good time.
Formative college years.
Oh, I agree. So Nashville is a really cool place. So we'll move on to the last kid. We don't have to talk about him a whole lot. I feel like we talked about him maybe in the last week or so. Is Michael Harrison Pilot. He's the 2023 4-star, number 100 overall, number 8 athlete, 6 foot, 190 pounds, out of Temple, Texas. He released his top 5 of Cal, Houston, TCU, Texas, and Oklahoma. He's got a couple officials set up with Texas and Cal coming up later this month. He's a versatile kid, can play both sides of the ball as a safety, as a wide receiver, can run the ball a little bit too. Just a very versatile kid. Also runs track and field. So he's a kind of all over the place, but he put OU in his top 5. I feel really confident. You look at those other schools, I'm guessing Texas will be the biggest, guy or biggest team to recruit against. I don't really feel like it's going to be overly difficult for OU to win out and get his commitment. I may be totally wrong, but Brandon, what do you think?
Certainly hope you're right. He's a guy that, as you mentioned, plays everywhere on the football field, also runs track, also plays baseball. Very athletic, great. We've talked about him a lot. I'm excited about the possibility. I think you're discrediting Houston a little bit. I know you're not high on him going to Houston. I think there's a chance he does consider Houston pretty strongly. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, I hope he's soon adding him to that safety room that is already has some dogs on it, as Pat McAfee likes to say on his show, if you guys watch it. We got some guys there with Jaden Rowe, with Robert Spears-Jennings. He would just be a great piece and a guy that you can do a lot of stuff with. I mean, obviously, I think he can play. He could probably play in the slot, probably play corner, probably play safety. I mean, he has experience just about everywhere in high school, and he's got the speed to do it. I hope this pilot here, Harrison Pilot thing gets done pretty quickly. We'll see. But I mean, I'm excited about it. The idea of him playing.
Yeah, and I will say that he is unofficially visiting OU this weekend, and I believe they're recruiting him as a wide receiver. Not saying that he couldn't play as a defensive back, but I believe he has been identified as a wide receiver. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he's played his last 2 years at wide receiver in high school. I think he's just a guy like a lot of the recruits that we've talked about. Either they're multi-sport athletes or they're multi-position players on the football field, and Harrison Pilot fits in that mold. I mean, I think Brandon is right. Like, I think Houston definitely has a chance at him. Texas, again, they're competing for, it seems like, most of the top recruits right now, and probably because of NIL. But who knows? Maybe Sark is a decent recruiter. I don't follow Texas that much, but Oklahoma, I think, has a shot, especially with, not to say desperate, but we need to pick it up on the wide receiver front with the 2023 recruiting. And I know some fans of OU don't think that's the case, but just because we got 2 transfers this year really doesn't mean anything, especially with the transfer portal always being in play for these guys. And with, at the end of the day, just like it's been for college football history, the NFL, and just plain old graduation, like, we could essentially lose half of this wide receiver room. And if we only bring in 1 or 2 recruits, it's really not going to be good for the wide receiver position. Like, we need this staff hopefully is focusing on turning that around for this class. And we've said it a couple of times, and we're going to repeat it, but for the rest of the season, like, this offense probably is being stalled with recruiting because maybe not a lot of players know what Levy can put out on the field, and they'll need to see it with how it's going to look at Oklahoma. But doesn't mean that the staff can't be pushing hard to try to get their commitment earlier than when the football season starts.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that he doesn't have his official visit set up with Oklahoma. I'm guessing, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm imagining that he's going to try to take his official this fall for a game. So he's already using his Texas. He's going to be using his Cal visit. So he's going to have 3 more. So, 2 other schools other than OU, probably for TCU and Houston. I don't know if he's waiting for later this summer or later this fall for their officials, but with him not using a Champ U barbecue official visit, seems like he might be waiting to take one for a game day, which will be pretty good. You guys have any final thoughts on anything? If not, Brandon can just roll right into his individual challenge.
Shoot, yeah. Which of the 4 kids that we talked about tonight are you most excited about? We'll stick to football. I mentioned Bon Jovi as mine just because he sounds like Bon Jovi. He lives in our backyard. I think he's going to be the most exciting and probably the most productive collegiate player of everybody we talked about tonight. If I could only get one of these recruits, it would be him for me. What about for you guys?
For me, I think Jabron Harvey. I mean, the fact that he put up 28 sacks in a single season is ridiculous. But I like Jovi too. I mean, nothing wrong with him.
Well,
Jose?
If Richard Young counts, then Richard Young and Chop. But if he doesn't count, then I'll go with By Jovi because, I mean, the fact that he's doing so well and in football so early in his football career, and most of these guys have been playing football since they were like 5 or 6 years old, and he's beating a lot of them out in regards to ranking on these recruiting platforms like that. That itself is extremely impressive. So
that's
even if he didn't live in our backyard, but that's definitely a piece to it.
Definitely. That's a very good point. I mean, it's impressive. So if you made it this far, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell so you know whenever we go live for the live stream. It might be not right on the dot at 7:30, but we're going to try our best to be exactly on the dot. But if you have that bell on, it'll let you know. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked below. Follow us on everything. Spread the word, and we will catch you guys later this week.